Okay, hi. We're students from
Hello.
the GFS Youth newspaper, and today we're interviewing Mr. Ian, the head of secondary. So to start, can the interviewers introduce themselves, please?
Hi, I'm Shaden from 12E.
Hi, I'm Tyler from 12C.
Hi, I'm Hamzi from 12A.
And I'm Inaya from 12B. The first question is, what have you, Mr. Ian, gained from the whole COVID experience?
I think the first thing that I've gained is to always put things into perspective and to context, no matter what you do in life. And understand that despite this global pandemic, it's been an opportunity for people to come together through a tragedy. However, it brings people closer together. So I think what I've gained is perspective, and I've gained the ability to develop relationships with closer relationships with, one, the people I love, and two, the people that I work with every day, including staff, students, parents, etc. So I think it's about perspective and context is what I've gained personally from this pandemic.
To contrast your previous response, what do you feel like you've lost during the pandemic?
Well, to contrast what I've just said, I think from a personal point of view, you lose sometimes sight and focus of certain things in your life. Things that you think are important actually are not that important. So you start to prioritize and you put things, like I said, into context, but you lose touch with some things that are actually not that important in the big scheme of things. So, for example, I love to play golf, as an example. Is that important for me right now? Not really. When you think about it, I think a lot of people have actually gone one or two ways in this pandemic, in terms of their health and things like that. So you can actually lose, and I did this on my iPhone, and I track my health religiously on my iPhone. And when you look at the graphs on my iPhone, the movement, the exercise, how long you stand, how far you travel each day, walk, I lost a lot of that over the pandemic because I was sat in my living room, like all of you were, behind a computer. So I actually lost my health, as in the high levels of health I expect to maintain. Now that is important. So I think I've lost some things that I enjoy doing, but now they're gradually starting to reappear. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay, how have you taken care of your mental health and physical well-being in this time? Were there any challenges that were particularly difficult to overcome?
So like I just said, this links quite nicely into what I've just been talking about. So in terms of physical well-being, like I said, I've always maintained a really healthy lifestyle physically as an avid sportsman. But in terms of during the lockdown, what happened is, like I said, I started to not do certain things I love to do: running, golfing, playing tennis, lots of things like that. But I actually started to pick up things that are new to me, like cycling, as an example. And I tried what's called the insanity workout, which you can do in your living room. So actually, my physical well-being, although it declined in terms of the things I enjoy doing, I actually looked after it in different ways. Now, as a result of that, unfortunately, I got quite a bad back injury by doing things that probably a 43-year-old man shouldn't be doing, shall we say. And now you know my age as well. But in terms of my mental well-being and my emotional well-being, I reflected a lot. I sat at the end of each day. I like to reflect a lot at the end of each day anyway, but I took that a lot more seriously, and paid more attention to the little things like your breathing and your mindfulness, and actually trying to stay in the present and not worry about the past, not worry about what's going to happen in the future. So I think, like we tried to do and encourage at GEMS Founders School, that the practice of mindfulness was quite important to me, just to sit and think and reflect and of what currently is. So that's what I did with my mental well-being. And the challenges, absolutely. There were so many different challenges, because at the beginning of the lockdown, I was constantly watching the news in England. Every day I would watch the Prime Minister's daily briefing, and I think that affected my mental well-being, because it's actually quite depressing. It's quite depressing to listen to those statistics and the figures and, all of that. Although it's really sad and it's real, it does affect you. So I disengaged actually from that. I moved away from listening to the news and getting myself sort of down, which really helped. So I think that was quite difficult to sort of overcome, because it became a bit of a habit. But yeah, and obviously the fact that you're away from your loved ones, as we all are internationally, that's something that you have to overcome, and understand that I couldn't travel, like most of us couldn't travel to go back to our home countries. That was hard to overcome, because that's the first time really that's happened to me over the past 10 years.
Okay. Now some questions about your career. I assume teachers are proud of all their students, but there must be some that stand out. What is a particular student success story that you're proud of?
There's so many, Hamzi, including many of you actually that are with us today, and so many at GEMS Founders School. But I'm not going to talk about a GEMS Founders School student, actually. I'm going to talk about some students who I worked with back in England. Two students in particular, and two very different success stories, both in the same class, actually. So they were both year 7 when I started teaching them, and I was teaching PE. As you all know, I used to teach PE, and I took them all the way through to one of them all the way through to year 13, and then the other one left at the end of year 11. But the two success stories are very different. So one of them was a boy who was an introvert. He was very, very shy, lacked confidence. He was very able, but just didn't believe in himself. So the success story essentially was working with him for years upon years. But the key thing when I realized I had made a difference to his life was when I led a school trip to America, to the States, to the university that I used to go to. And I took about 20 students with us. And it was a rock climbing activity. So we were all at a rock climbing wall. And this boy, what I did is I put all of the grades on the wall. So I put a U at the bottom of the wall, and then a G and an F, all the way up to an A star at the very top of the wall, a big climbing wall. And I said, you all need to challenge yourself to get the best grades. And this was obviously this was with relation to GCSEs. And you should all be aiming for the top grade, that A star. So they all had to try to get to the top of the climbing wall. And this boy would not do it. He was, like I said, he lacked confidence in everything that he did. But what I did is I put a blindfold on him, and I blindfolded him, and he went up that wall like that. And he didn't realize he'd actually got to the top, to that A star. Now, he actually got an A star on his exam that year. And I think that moment actually convinced him that actually when you cover all of your fears, as in, you close your eyes, so to speak, you can achieve anything you want to. So that was one that stands out to me. And the other one's a very different one, a really talented young sportsman, good cricketer, good footballer, good at rugby, good at everything, basketball. And he's a student that I worked with very closely. to make sure that he got a professional football contract. And now he's actually a Premier League football player. And he earns about £20,000 or £30,000 a week. So in terms of a different type of success, in terms of someone who is sort of extrinsically motivated by that type of success, that was huge because he's got to the top of his profession, or reached a really good height. Whereas the other boy was an introvert and he wasn't motivated extrinsically, but his intrinsic motivation to do well, I brought the best out of him with that. So I think those two are probably, over the past 10, 15 years, are probably the ones that stuck in my mind. But there's lots at GFS that I know are going to be success stories. Like I said, including some of you here today as well.
Then, in your career or school life, what is something you wish you'd done differently?
Well, I think probably, and I'll go back to my school life. I think, again, because I was so obsessed with playing football, I suppose the one regret I have is, and this is probably not the advice, it's not advice, it's probably not the story I should be sharing, but I'm going to share, was I just didn't work hard enough at GCSE level. I didn't. I was like many students in year 11 and year 10 that just realized too late that you need to work really hard. And it's not that I didn't work hard, I just wasn't smart enough in my revision. So I think I wish I'd have done that differently, but I also wish I wish I'd have been at GFS actually, or a school like GFS, because the school I was at, I didn't really know how to, if that makes sense. So although I would have done that differently, I wish I was in a different environment so that I could apply different strategies to my studies, because I was just taught how to study out of a book, basically. And that's not how I learn best. So I wish I could have done that differently, but it was out of my control to a certain extent. In my career, I left school at 16 years old. I signed professionally to play football for a short period of time. I think looking back, it was an amazing opportunity, but if I deeply, deeply reflect, I think probably I wish I'd have done A-levels. Actually, I wish I'd have done A-levels because it probably would have, I don't regret not doing them. It's not a regret. It's just, I think upon reflection, it probably would have been the wisest thing to do. But you say that in hindsight, after 3 years of playing football, you start to realize this was a great opportunity. It was brilliant. It was something I always wanted to do. But were those 3 years wasted? I don't know. Things always work out for a reason, yeah?
To tie in with your previous answer, was being a teacher always your first passion or like your initial passion?
So when I was 14 years old, and I started my GCSEs in year 10, we all had to do compulsory work experience at school. Now, I know that students out in this part of the world don't always get that opportunity for lots of different reasons, but I did work experience. And the one, when I met with the careers counsellor, I was offered a placement at a school, interestingly, a local primary school. So my first actual experience of work at 14 years old was as a teacher, a student teacher, so to speak. So is it something that I've always wanted to do? When I look back at the report I got, and I've still got that at my parents' house in England, the actual report from the teacher that I was working with said, Ian would be a great teacher. So I think I didn't realize I was good at it. I didn't realize that I really wanted to do it at that stage. I knew I would be good at working with young people. I know that for sure as I grew older. But no, it's not something I always wanted to be from a very young age. No, I wanted to be a footballer. And actually, when I speak to my parents, they always said I had a big interest in being a fireman. So, which interestingly, I went to do the training to become a fireman actually after I left playing football, and I didn't didn't get accepted. I got scared when I was underneath and crawling through the tunnels in the pitch black with big oxygen tanks on. I didn't like it. Freaked me out, so I didn't do it.
Okay, what have you learned from your time here at GFS?
What have I learned? I have learned that you get very rarely get good opportunities in life. And you learn, what I've learned is that when you get an opportunity, you go and grasp it with two hands and you hold on to it. Because I'll be honest with you, I've worked in four different schools, 3 in Dubai and one back home in England. And when you get an opportunity to work at a school like GFS, like I said, you grasp it because it's very unique, because you're given opportunity, you're given, and I'm not just saying this because it's our school vision, but you do genuinely get the opportunity to grow and to flourish and to succeed. And I genuinely mean that. In my career, I've been given wonderful opportunities here to try to build a secondary school. And if you remember sort of 3 or 4 years ago, where the secondary school had very few students and very few teachers, and to look at what we've got now, that opportunity does not always come around. So I've learned to make sure that you make the most of that opportunity and try to really try to do your best with that opportunity that you're given in life. So, and I've loved every minute of it. I've enjoyed every single minute of my time at GFS, and I look forward to the next however long where we make this an outstanding school, because that's the goal, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so the meeting's now over. Thank you, Mr. Ian, for participating. It means a